AskReddi by Midnight's an offer bitch. What TV trope was common in the not so distant past but is completely unacceptable today? Misunderstandings that can now be cleared up by a text or cell phone call. Entire episodes used to be built around people not be able to communicate with each other and just having to figure stuff out. Cell phones complicate so much fiction these days. Running through the airport to confess one's love for the protagonist. Home Alone premises. These wouldn't happen today with current security measures. I was about to do the whole run to the airport thing, like Ross did on Friends and Liz Lemon did in real life. I have doubts that a clip show episode would do well these days. These used to be made to pad out your episodes without a big budget cost, but shows are increasingly getting written and budgeted around how many episodes the story needs and not how many they need to fill every time slot that season. Clip shows also worked because people didn't necessarily watch every episode of a show back then. A lot of shows took some time to find an audience, so when the clip show played, there was a good chance you were seeing some clips you were unfamiliar with. In the age of streaming, that's not really the case anymore. If you start watching a show that's now in its 4th season, you're going to start from episode 1 on streaming. Very special episodes. Where characters meet life-altering situations, drug addictions, teen pregnancy, gun violence, and then are back to being carefree the next episode. The most egregious example of this I've seen was on 21 Jump Street when Johnny Depp shoots a judge and kills him, and the next episode it's like it never happened. A rookie cop kills a judge and no one cares? Not really TV trope, but slapping women that were supposedly having a panic attack was almost a trope in westerns and noir movies. Get a hold of yourself. https://yahoo.be/fnkpidbtc to see ?19 ? People walking around with amnesia. Every freaking show, someone hit their head and had amnesia and there was nothing anyone could do about it. Like, hello, brain injury? Usually the solution to problems brought about by a blow to the head is another blow to the head. Because bees are like on-off switches. Stalking a woman long enough and constantly will eventually make her fall for you. This was probably the most confusing thing growing up in the late 80s and early 90s. This odd thing was sold to both genders. The guy was supposed to keep on going after being told to be uninteresting. This led into guys thinking no means ask again and girls saying no to guys that they were interested in, but thought this is how the game was played in real life. Even in my early 20s I saw girls in my party crew doing this, quite often harshly rejecting a drop-dead handsome guy, then being all pissy about it when the guy just fucked off as being told to and didn't instead start the rom-com mating ritual. Spying on naked women or women changing clothes as an innocent boy teen rite of passage. It's Always Sunny does a great episode called The Gang Hits the Slopes or something. They go to a ski resort and live out 80s tropes from their childhood before realizing how fucked up it all was. Everything from what you mentioned to skiing without helmets. Game show hosts kissing female contestants on the lips. Did anyone do this other than Richard Dawson? Edit. I've watched a fair amount of The Price is Right and Match Game over the years, and while there was cheek kissing, pocket fishing, and lewd remarks, I don't recall any kissing on the lips except on Family Feud, at least not routinely. Jokes about spousal abuse. One of these days, Alice. Suicide used to be a common joke, especially in cartoons. If you wanted to show a character was sad, they would pull out a gun and put it to their head. Daffy Duck did this all the time and it was normal. Honestly, I feel like this kind of humor would play well with today's youth, although maybe it wouldn't fly with the censors these days. Comedic town drunk. Think Otis from the Andy Griffith Show. I think part of the problem is the comedic town drunk is something so many people can relate to because every small town seems to have one. My town growing up certainly did. His name was Silas. He drove a lawnmower everywhere because he lost his license, and would shout yeehaw when it reached max speed. The man could consume an impossible quantity of alcohol and just as quickly piss it all out. He was homeless and on a first name basis with every police officer in the county. He could tell the funniest, dirtiest jokes, and in late autumn would commit some minor harmless crime to spend the winter in jail, where he'd put on a lot of weight, instead of spending it in his tent. He was also a very reliable handyman. Our family hired him a few times to remove massive trees, and he'd drop them right where he said he would. But that's where the comedy and trope end. I've referred to him in past tense because he died of liver failure. He was ill with an addiction and desperately needed help to get past it, and that's what the TV tropes fail to discuss. Consequently, it's funny to the audience because it conveniently ignores the harsh reality of the situation. Sex pests. There used to always be a sitcom character relentlessly hitting on women and talking about how horny they were. The most recent two I can think of were probably Fez and early series Howard Wolowitz. I don't think it's a completely erased type of joke, but you don't really see full-on sex pests anymore, and rewatching some of these interactions is actually a little surprising. There was a good Big Bang episode, yes, it happened, particularly in the first 3 seasons, in which he pulled his whole unselfish madam, I'm a Lothario routine on Penny and she makes him feel like a little worm, which he is. I do sort of recall the other characters siding with Howard, though. He doesn't mean anything by it, you've hurt his feelings. To their credit, she doesn't back off. She does soften it a little and say something along the lines of, look, you idiot, no woman wants this. So they did sort of deal with Howard eventually. Romancizing teachers dating their students. Yeah, which led to a slightly interestingly aged scene when it came to an episode Married with Children. On the one hand, the episode severely romanticizes the idea. On the other, whilst it's all meant to be a joke at Buck's expense, it does mean the ending where Elle turns up and calls the substitute he mistakes as preying on his son a disgusting pervert to her face and then sets the police on her, feel weirdly right. Mind if I smoke in places where people would instantly object today, like cars, airplanes, spaceships, the baby's nursery, etc. A fine Zuban cigar, one of those can really stink up a maternity ward. People living in Nick and Delhi that never lock the front door. Pretty sure Friends lampshade this with an episode where they all get locked out and Monica even asks who locked the door. That door is never locked. Quicksand, rattlesnakes and grappling hooks. The worst is when you are stuck in quicksand so you grab a vine to pull yourself out but the vine is a snake. Not just to piggyback onto you fat kid analysis, but rape as character development for a female character. It was a very common trope with soap operas. Luke and Laura on General Hospital were moved into a relationship because he raped her on the floor of his nightclub. Cricket Blair, nice but vapid teen model on The Young and Amp, The Restless, became Christine Blair, law student, when she was raped in her apartment. Marty Saybrook on One Life to Live was portrayed as a spoiled, snotty, and, heavens to Betsy, promiscuous party girl who was upset the town's pastor wouldn't date her. After being gang raped on the show, her character became a psychiatrist. Brooke Logan Forrester from The Bold and the Beautiful was set up to be raped by a man hired by her own former mother-in-law, in order to set up a truce between Brooke and her mother-in-law. And so on, for decades. The irony is not lost on me that soap operas were women's entertainment. Sexual assault as character development is rampant in literature, in my opinion. Primarily in fantasy, also. I gotta say, I went back and watched some episodes of A-Team, and those scenes of Hannibal disguising himself as a Chinese laundromat operator made me choke on my drink. In Get Smart, there was a baddie named The Claw, but the joke is he's Chinese so always pronounces his name as The Craw. https://yahoo.be /ftgag3vnif8 SIJVWZORFT-VZJECJX. Fixing the tom girl who likes to wear boys' clothes, no makeup, and do boy things. There's an Andy Griffith Show episode that would be considered an over-the-top parody if it came out now. Edit, Tita Ultima for pointing out I meant tomboy. I think you mean tomboy. Tom Gerald would be a dude that likes to wear girly things. There's an episode of I Love Lucy where slipping Lucy a roofie is a plot device. She's convinced Ricky wants to kill her and thus starts acting all jumpy and paranoid around him. So Ricky consults a doctor who gives him a sedative to help her distress, and he slips it in her drink. She sees this and thinks it's poison, so she switches her glasses, but he switches them back. She finds out, thinks she's going to die. Honestly, it's still pretty funny, though the date rape vibes aren't as bad as the fact that Lucy thought her husband wanted her dead and tried to trick him into drinking poison. That's pretty dark, lol. The flamboyant gay character where their sexuality is either intended for the audience to laugh and make fun of if becomes a joke with other characters. Or in the case of Friends, the straight character who everybody thinks is gay and is the butt, pun intended, of the joke. Not to a serious one, but I don't watch much TV, but are they still making light of head injuries and its selective amnesia properties? I swear Lex Luthor in Smallville should have a brain the consistency of watered down pudding by the end of the series. 51 times. https://www.digitals.pi.com/tv/ust-v/lois-lane-knocked-out-count/close bracket. Lois Lane beat him at 52 times, despite not being on the show until season 4. Love spells potions being a light-hearted bit of hijinks as opposed to attempted rape. I like how in Harry Potter they're occasionally presented as a bit of innocent teenage shenanigans, and are also a central part of the origin of Wizard Hitler. They could have headlined their ban with that. Overweight, lazy husband with a smoking hot, nagging wife. Add in one rebellious teen and one nerdy kid and boom. The family sitcom recipe. This still feels like most CBS sitcoms, and an ethnic neighbor. One of these days, POW. Right in the kisser. And, bang, zoom, you're going to the moon, Alice. The Honeymooners. It's a TV comedian. And he was just using space travel as a metaphor for beating his wife. Smoking. My favorite thing is when they show warnings before movies. Guy gets his brains blown out, gang rape, smoking. Gay panic. I love Friends, but how often the joke was at any of the guys doing anything feminine. Men being complete morons that can't even iron a shirt without ruining it. The incompetent and OP dad that gets talked down to by the children and wife. Thank God for the wife who has to rescue him from himself because he's a kind soul, but boy, what a moron. The incel stalker nerd Lara Urkel and Screech. I think it's crazy how Family Matters was originally a spin-off of Perfect Strangers, intending to be about the struggles of a working-class black family, and the entire show was pretty much hijacked by Urkel, who was only ever slated to be a minor character.